Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the New Nation Podcast. My name is Mike, and I will be your host. Today, we've got a really exciting episode with Anthony D'Ambrosio, who is the writer-director of the new Maximilian Kolbe biodrama, I guess you can call it. It's a movie about a real person, and it's dramatic, a biodrama. He'll be on to talk about the movie and St Maximilian Kolbe, one of our most beloved saints of the 20th century. Before that, though, something weird happened. My wife was mentioning this to me earlier, that she gave birth at Vanderbilt, and then she got a letter saying that there was a data breach at Vanderbilt, which exposed some of her information, I'm assuming, which brings me to a great lead-in of my brand new and starting again relationship with my partner, Aura. So let's hear a little bit about Aura, and then we can get into the episode. Data brokers sell your information to scammers, spammers, and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, email, home address, health records, even your relatives. It's all out there. That's why I've been using Aura, the sponsor of today's podcast. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests for me. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it protects me from hackers who could use this information to help them access my social media accounts, my bank accounts, or other sensitive information. Aura also does so much more to protect me and my family from online threats I can't see. It's really easy to set up, so I don't have to download several different apps to get things like antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more. I get everything at one affordable price. You may already have one or two of these tools already, but not having Aura is like locking the front door and leaving the back door wide open. Aura is always on, doing the hard work of keeping me safe so I can focus on other tasks with peace of mind. I value my privacy, and I value yours, my valued listener. You can go to aura.com/new to start your 2-week free trial, also linked below in the description. Remember, guys, it's a 2-week free trial, so allow Aura to be the security that gives you the peace of mind and the comfort that someone out there is looking out for you. Aura.com/new. Hi there, everybody, and thank you for listening to another episode of the New Nation Podcast. I'm your host, Mike. I'm very happy to have a guest with me on this podcast today that is going to be talking about his film, A Triumph of the Heart. This is writer-director Anthony D'Ambrosio. Thank you for joining the show, Anthony.
Thanks so much for having me, man.
Awesome. We're really excited. As I was just telling you before, St. Maximilian Kolbe, everyone loves him. Everyone who's listening to this show, people know that I've mentioned him before on the show. He's probably, I think, one of the most important saints of the 20th century. I think we could probably both agree to that. And yeah, we're here to talk about him a little bit. I want to talk to you about your movie, obviously, but I also want to talk about the process of making films, because if it's one thing my audience knows is that they can't get me to shut up about my own movies. So we're going to talk about that. So just a little bit about you, and not necessarily your whole background, but just a little, like, where do you come from in the world, and how long have you been writing and directing?
Yeah, hailing from Denver, Colorado, but Texas boy, born and bred, and I'm a huge fan of film. I actually came to film much later on in my life. I was a homeschooled kid, and so not a lot of film, not a lot of TV. We're just like given books and sticks and lots of land outside to play in. But it was actually much later on. I started running an agency later on in my life, and as entrepreneurs are wont to do, anytime somebody was like, "Hey, can you do this?" I was like, "Yeah, I need money, so yeah, I can do that." And we were doing a lot of like social media stuff, and people started asking if we did ads, and I was like, "Oh yeah, sure, I can totally do an ad." And I afterwards called up my buddy Sam Storich, who I went to seminary with, and who is a filmmaker, really fantastic filmmaker in his own right. And so be like, "Hey, can you teach me how to do this and help me out and come down?" And that doing small ads for nonprofits was the place where I started and really loved it. I think there's something really collaborative about film, and it's much less. I'm a writer, so you spend a lot of time as a writer just like sitting alone in like this vacuum. And I realized that film was like that, but with other people, and so it was therefore a lot more fun.
Okay. So you produced video content for an ad agency that you ran or owned?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Were your clients kind of all across the board, or were they focused in a specific area?
Yeah, it started out at really just lots of nonprofits and local startups like climbing gyms and breweries and things like
Mm.
that. And I helped to found something called Catholic Creatives, which then pulled my whole sort of network and world back into the Catholic Church, which at the time I was a little bit resentful of, but turned out to be a huge blessing for me and
Oh,
really
awesome.
teed me up to make this film that I'm working on now.
Oh, cool. Well, let's not gloss over the fact that you said seminary. Okay, so what kind of family did you come from? Were they? I assumed the Ambrosio sounds Italian to me, so I assume
Yeah.
that you come from a Catholic Italian family.
Very yes, that's right. It's actually Catholic Irish, but
Oh,
the Irish was just completely eclipsed by the Italian in my
it
family. And
happens. It
yeah,
happens. Yeah, yeah. My
it's
wife is
definitely
half.
the dominant.
She's half Irish, half Italian too, but she's got the
Okay.
Irish. She's got the Irish last name.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, my grandmother is a Carey. So
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Oh, cool. So, okay, so Catholic family, Catholic upbringing. What drove you to seminary? And I obviously don't want to get into if you don't want to, why didn't you complete seminary, or why aren't you a priest right now? But
Celibacy.
how? Oh, so okay, yeah, sure, okay, that's fine. Um, but yeah, how old were you when you entered seminary?
I entered right out of high school. I was a punk rock emo kid, rebelled really hard in high school,
Mm,
and then had a conversion, had this kind of taste of worldly success that gave me a sense of its vacuity and the emptiness there. And I think that feeling of desiring meaning and desiring kind of a an alternative to the lifestyle that I had been living in high school really was what drove me to seminary.
oh, interesting. Okay, I like that. Okay, so you go to seminary and you decide, obviously, like you said, this probably isn't for me. Did you go right from seminary? Did you go into college in the secular world, or did you, work any sort of jobs that led you to the advertising agency?
No, it was I left seminary right at the end of my college degree. So I got a philosophy degree
Mm,
and was completely I think a lot of people that you talk to when they leave something that's like this kind of insular, it's sort of like leaving the army or something like that, or coming back. You're like don't really know how to fit back into the world in a way,
right, right.
and that was how it was for me for sure. So I took a job doing youth ministry, and while I was doing that, I I realized that there was like a dead end here. It was
Yeah.
like how do I make my way into the world? And I ended up um, getting going to I have some pretty funny stories about this. I actually found this agency that had on their website, like, you can send us an email, you can bring us your resume, or you can send us a carrier pigeon. That was like, for some reason, that was like a big part of their brand, was like pigeons and stuff. So I
Okay.
literally found a service that sent them a carrier pigeon, and and told them I would be dropping my resume by, and ended up like basically presenting myself and saying, "Hey, I will give you guys 20 hours a week for free if you teach me the marketing, basically the marketing agency world." I just like loved it and wanted to be in that place, and so the owner ended up mentoring me for many years, and
Yeah.
I got into sales, and I was doing sales for them, and after that, I started my own firm. So
That's awesome. You took the initiative there. It's like one of those things where I think people don't expect other people to take that seriously. And then when they find someone who's like, wow, he actually sent us a carrier pigeon. We like that sort of initiative that he took. And I mean, he clearly wants to get in front of us. That's why in any job interview, I've always talked about the follow up is one of the most important things to do. Especially if it's like a weird sort of, let's say, interactive interview or anything like that. But even as a young kid, pre-internet, when I would do interviews, I would always follow up on the phone the day later saying, hey guys, thank you for seeing me. And I've just heard from so many people, even if I didn't get the job, we really appreciate the follow-up. So good on you for
yeah.
sending the carrier pigeon. Uh, so let's talk a little bit about St. Maximilian Kolbe. Let's talk a little bit about your movie. We don't necessarily have to go in depth about his life and his martyrdom because, like I've said, the people who listen to the New Nation, they're pretty familiar with St. Maximilian Kolbe.
Mhm.
If you can give me, let's say, the log line to his life, what would it be?
Oh man, the log line to his life. It's different from the log line to my movie, so
Right,
I
right.
have to do a little bit more like creative thinking here. But
Mm-hmm.
I would say uh, something to the tune of militant Catholic priest goes to Japan, uh, experiences burnout, comes uh, comes back to Poland as a hero, with the biggest newspaper in the city, and ends up trading his life to save another man's life in Auschwitz.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's a good log line. That's pretty much the cliff notes to essentially what happened. But I guess for anybody that needs, I guess maybe a little bit more, we could say that he was a Franciscan, right? Or no, was he a Franciscan monk?
Franciscan.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he was a
Franciscan.
Franciscan who started his own newspaper that during in Poland after I guess the Nazis took over, they essentially allowed him to keep his newspaper and keep his monastery or whatever it was until he started to get super critical of them and not signing the I guess the agreement or whatever to pledge loyalty to Nazi Germany or whatever it was, and
Mhm.
eventually is arrested by the SS and sent to Auschwitz, where he later be martyred.
He was actually offered. He was actually offered citizenship because his dad was
Oh, he
actually.
has German lineage, right? That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they were like,
Okay.
"Oh, we think we could maybe like bring this guy into our world." I think there was also part of why they let him stay was because they thought like, "Oh, this guy might have some some fascist leanings, some like really right leaning stuff. He's very conservative, obviously, and he's
Right.
got some German heritage. Let's offer him some citizenship, see if we can get him on our team." And then as soon as it became obvious that he was not actually a fan,
Right.
that he was like critical of
Yeah.
fascism,
Yeah.
um, he got brought into Auschwitz. Yeah,
Yeah, Nazi fascism, no. Christo-fascism, maybe yes. Also, Maximilian Kolbe, big disliker of Freemasons. So
yeah,
anybody who out there is listening, like Saint Kolbe, super base when it comes to Freemasonry and the evils that they offer to the world. Okay, so a little bit about the movie.
Mhm.
The movie Triumph of the Heart, and like I told you this before we started, you did a Whiplash. If anybody's seen Whiplash, they know the movie about the drummer who is at, for lack of a better place, basically he's at Juilliard of. Is he at Juilliard or no? I don't know if he's like
I don't think
actually at
they even
Juilliard.
mentioned it.
No, they
Yeah,
don't. But he's at an elite music school, and the feature Whiplash came from a short. And your movie Triumph of the Heart seems like it comes from the short into. I have it right here. Into Death and Through It. Is it? What is it called?
Into Death and Beyond It. Yeah.
Into Death and Beyond It. Right. So what I wanted to ask you was, can you explain the impetus for Into Death and Beyond It, and then what happens directly after, and then it's not until years later that you pursue Triumph of the Heart. So give us a little bit of that story.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things that was happening with my agency early on was that we became this like strategic design think tank for all of the young adult groups that were founding and sort of starting up in the Catholic world in Texas, at
Mm,
least in Dallas. And I think all of these people that were now getting into places of leadership in the diocese or in these bigger parishes had all been youth ministers with me and my twin brother. And so they all started to realize like, hey, we need a creative team, and there's not enough money to actually like hire anyone individually. So we became this kind of like shared creative team for all of these different groups. And we were doing a lot of strategy and brainstorming. One of the problems that we're really trying to um, come together around was how do we reach people who are unchurched, dechurched, who've lost their faith. We know there's thousands and thousands and thousands of them in the DFW Metroplex that perhaps went to youth group or that grew up Catholic and now are sort of out there. They had conversion experiences. They actually probably would come back if the right kind of experience were offered to them. And so we worked on something called the 635, which was an outreach to that people group that met not in a church but in the Granada Theater, and did all these different like kind of creative programming things to speak to them. And one of the series that we did was a series on grief and doubt. And we wanted to find a story that was an inroad into that could start conversations that could be like this through line
Mm-hmm.
for the programming. And we decided that we would do a short film about St. Maximilian Kolbe that was like a 12 Angry Men style
Mm-hmm.
short film where all of the people who he was inside of the cell with would have these conversations about God, about suffering, about doubt with Kolbe. So it was like a high stakes way to sort of open the conversation. And when we did that, it was like I don't know if you've ever been in a place where a spiritual kind of like atomic bomb goes off and everybody
Mm-hmm.
is just kind of like shocked and they don't really know how to respond. There's just this like blankness on people's faces until you break it open in conversation. That was sort of how it was. And we knew that something really profound had happened and that there was something here. So we ended up really feeling like, all right, we need to develop this further. But it took about like 4 years for that to go from that moment of showing the short film to actually shooting a feature.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Did you enter the short into any competitions or anything like that, or was it merely kind of like a thought experiment?
Well, it was owned by the diocese. It was commissioned by them. And so we
Okay.
didn't have the ability to enter it in. I know that they planned to do so, but it's like who's in charge of that in a diocese?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So and it ended up like just being for this one event. And it worked very well to promote the conversations that we were trying to start there. But after that, it was just like, laying around doing nothing. And we felt like that was a bit of a wasted opportunity. So
Yeah.
really glad that that's coming back around now.
Okay. Here's a question still on the short because I want to ask you a question about how you wrote this. In any historical drama, there are facts, there are things that happen that you can portray on film. The hardest thing to portray on film is what people are saying to each other, because unless you have, let's say, like courtroom transcripts of what these people actually said, you can work that into your film. But it's just this question came to mind last night because I was watching the new Masters of the Air series on Apple, which is the continuation of Band of Brothers and The Pacific. And
Mhm.
it's personal to me because the show centers around pilots and crew of B-17 bombers in the Second World War, and my grandfather was a navigator on one of those planes. And the one thing that they can get right costume, they can get right technical details of planes, and they can get right the way these planes operate and everything like that. But where I've wondered is as a writer, and I've actually spoken to the writer of this before, but this was just to offer him materials that I had when I found out that he was working on the show. And this was like almost 10 years ago. But I don't know how to write about the people involved in historical dramas. What would they be saying? You have absolutely no idea what Kolbe and these prisoners were saying to each other in these cells. I mean, we have witnesses, so I'm sure that, but I mean, I'm pretty sure, like spoiler alert, I'm pretty sure no one in that cell survives, right? So
Right.
so even Kolbe, I think, is maybe one of the last people to die. But how
Mhm.
do you get into the headspace, or do you outline, do you sticky notes? How do you get
Yeah.
into the space of okay, this is what I think these guys would be talking about?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is, I think for every artist, you have to find your own personal connection with the story.
Hmm.
And um, for me, there were this all was really inspired during a time when I left the church. There was a beneath and behind and before the short film. There were meditations that I was having just in the privacy of my own home as I was really grappling with my own sort of nihilism, I guess.
Hmm.
And um, I had an experience of illness that um, kind of ripped my life away from me. I was about to get engaged, and all of my kind of prospects for where I was going with my career all just sort of crashed down during this season. Sorry
Whoa,
about
that's a
that.
metaphor.
Yeah, that's amazing. Anyway, I had and during that time, I was not sleeping and was meditating on Kolbe from the perspective of being in the cell with him, and was like having these like really angry, sort of visceral, sarcastic voices really coming out of me to provoke him, and was feeling kind of like I was trying to get God to, in some way, to respond through my anger. And I was like, this feels like a character, or maybe a couple different characters. And so I kind of started with that, and I think began to talk to other people about, if this was you, if you were in this,
Right.
like, what would you want to know? What would you say to Kolbe? What would you say to God? And what would be the things that you would be grappling with? And I think the big question, at least for me, and that a lot of the other people that I was talking to had when we got to the point of real honesty, was like, why not kill yourself? If you knew that you were going to die and the rest of your life was going to be this slow, absolutely excruciating, march towards death, why not just end it there? And if Kolbe is sort of the voice for not doing that, and everybody else starts with, yeah, that seems like the most reasonable thing to do, then you have a real kind of drama there. So that's really where we started. And then I would say the last part of it is, at the time in Auschwitz, it really wasn't like used for the Holocaust yet. At that time, it was mainly to exterminate people like Kolbe, people who were of the aristocratic or sort of leadership or intelligentsia class in Poland. And so you have people here who are high ups in the Polish army. You have people who were in government. You had anybody who is a leader in some way that had influence in the world and who was deemed not to be friendly to the power of the Nazis was going to be brought into this place. And you actually had homosexuals that were being shipped out from Germany. So that's like a really interesting milieu of types of personalities who might have all, at least in my mind, when you start to get into these levels of society, everybody knows each other, like, or at least they know of each other. And you start to have like a sense of, okay, that politician might be in here with somebody from the communist resistance, might be in here with POWs who are fighting in the war. And now you have this like very kind of interesting kaleidoscope of personalities that now have had their humanity ripped away from them. But if Kolbe is starting to draw that out, and you start seeing these kinds of glimpses or glimmers of their personalities, you have something really interesting. So that's how I broke.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine now. Well, that's a great, especially for a film, that would seem like a good, diverse group of characters to all have in a room together. But then for a writer, when I'm hearing you say that, I'm like, oh God, now I have to put myself, not oh God, blasphemy, people call me out on it. But wow, how do I put myself in the shoes, or at least in the mind, of a Polish homosexual or a POW'd Russian, or, like you said, a communist or part of an opposition party member? How do I do that? Then how do I work in conversation with Kolbe? That's very, very interesting. And did you spend as much time developing those characters as you did Kolbe, or did you kind of not have to do as much with Kolbe because you're like, I have him down already with these meditations that I've been doing in my life? I don't necessarily need to focus on dialogue as much with him versus the other guys.
Oh no, Kolbe was by far the hardest. Yeah, by far the hardest. I think the rest of them were actually a lot more accessible. I mean, I think that the sanctity is really hard to display on screen, and you can't have somebody be flat and have drama, especially not the main character. Even if they come in and they're the hero, you have somebody like their first act in the film is they sacrifice their life for another person to enter into the cell. Like they're starting at a pretty high bar
Right.
of like personal kind of like that's like the end of most movies, right? Like
Yeah.
the hero does that, and there's no more growth for them. So
Hmm.
I think figuring out how do I find a real arc for him that is genuine, that actually does justice to his character, but that also brings us along on a story where we know that he has like places yet to go. God has more to do in his life through this time in the cell, and that makes it like this tightrope walk of like how do we show his flaw and really like make that obvious, but still make him likable, but
Hmm.
also like give credence to the fact that he's already a great saint in many ways, like coming into the cell. So
Right.
yeah, he was very hard. Everybody else, I think, there's it, it, I can translate that person from people that I know.
Hmm.
Even if there's different experiences, there's archetypes of that I'm familiar with that I can kind of put myself into the shoes of. But I think Kolbe was much harder and frankly required more personal growth for me to be able to write him.
Right. Did you see Padre Pio?
I did, yeah.
Okay. So,
Let's get into this, man.
well, yeah. Okay.
Let's talk about this.
So probably one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, no joke.
I was so excited to see it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Even from
yeah,
the trailer, I was saying to myself, okay, what's going on here? But
yeah.
Shia's portrayal of Padre Pio, I thought, oh man, it's like if you gave me an hour and a half of this is awesome.
Right.
So what I was going to say was, and I mean, try to make a point around it was, there's obviously a lot of artistic impressionism from Abel Ferrara, the director, which he did have his own agenda to do with that movie, where he kind of made it into a communist love letter. But
Yeah.
if he would have focused on, and a lot of people say that he made the mistake by being overtly sexual in the sort of demon manifestations with Pio. And I was saying, I don't think so. I would like to see how gross it is and how much Pio had to overcome when he was dealing with those spiritual battles. Like, Padre
Right.
Pio is one of the best spiritual soldiers of our time and possibly of all time. So I didn't mind that. But what I hated was this director just wanted to say something that had absolutely nothing with Pio.
Nothing to
So
do with Pio. Yeah.
nothing to do with Pio at
It
all.
was a complete red herring. Like, what do you think happened there behind the scenes? Like, to me,
Well,
I was like, this feels like some kind of bait and switch. Like he was
right.
trying to get Catholics in the door to then
Hmm.
serve them this like communist manifesto or something.
Right. And demonic manifesto, which is, and I'm wondering, Shia, I don't think was there during all days of filming. I think they had him
No.
for maybe like 2 weeks,
Right.
Depending on what his stuff was. He gone. And I remember he was saying that he screened, or Bishop Barron was saying, yeah, and he screened the movie for the brothers of, I forget what order he was in with in California.
Mhm.
But I'm wondering if he had to have seen the movie before he screened it. I'm
Yeah.
wondering if he gave the priests and the brothers and the people who were there to just say like, hey, listen, I didn't know that this was going to be or turn out this way.
Right.
Let's focus on the Pio stuff. So it's very hard. It's not that it's very hard. It's very easy for a director to put his own personal spin on this story and then call it something. Because the movie should not have been called Padre Pio, because it's not about
Yeah.
Padre Pio. This movie is called
That's
Triumph of the... Right. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I'm just saying, like, to me, that's like either a level of self-indulgence that is completely like it breaks all of the rules of filmmaking in every way. So,
Mhm.
like, how does somebody get permission to do that? Either that, or there's some kind of real agenda behind the money to do it, to specifically like target Christians with something that I don't know. I don't want to be like a conspiracy theorist, but I feel like the way that I know how money works and how you raise money for films
Mhm.
now, it's like there were people that got behind an agenda and a pitch that he was making.
Sure.
And I think that pitch probably had some political spin on it, which is part of why it was so bad. I think when you set out to make a movie with that kind of thing, it really tends to suck. But
But it's also Abel Ferrara, and I'm not surprised. So
Yeah.
people who have never heard of him are like, what is this that I'm watching? If you've ever seen Bad Lieutenant,
Mhm.
you know what you're getting into. But so
Right.
that was my next question about raising funds. So do the short, you're meditating on turning it into a feature. You're saying there's a lot more here. Uh, you know, from me talking about it, people know that raising money for a feature film is no easy task. Was yours as far as budget concerned? Was it an indie? Was it a micro indie? I forget what the classifications are, but what sort
Started
of
out as
classification?
micro indie.
Yes.
Yeah. We the basically like there's a cap at like 300K, and
Hmm.
that like ends up into a different level.
Right.
We were planning on staying right under that, and then
Hmm.
we ended up while we were in production just like having to pull some maydays and
Yeah.
spend another. We spent all of our post production budgets. We spent another 60,000 while we were there
Hmm.
dealing with some of the problems that were coming up. But we yeah, I think that part of the raising of the funds that was actually a very unexpected part of the process. I thought that it was going to be very hard and take a very long time,
Mm.
and that actually was not the case. I think that the first pitches that I started doing, um, the first pitches that I did were all to like more institutional places that had like, hey, you can drop like 300K right now on this movie, and here's a pitch as to why this would be 1,000 times better than anything else that you put 300K into.
Sure. Sure.
And I won't say who passed on it, but all
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
the ones that are out there that could have passed on it and could have done it, all passed on it. And
Right.
then I was just like, I don't know what to do for maybe, I don't know, like 9 months.
Hmm.
And I I think November of last year, I had my first like dinner where I showed the short film to some more like, I guess, fortunate friends of mine, and really unexpectedly they said that they were going to put the first like 10K in. And so I was like, oh wow, I need to like structure a deal for how how this is like, what does 10K give you, you know?
Right.
They gave me money before I was like formally pitching. And so I put together that deal, and then went to a couple of other friends who were of the same kind of template. Like, these are not super successful people. They're just people who have some extra from investments and from, from businesses that they started or whatever. And Jeff Scheffelbein, who is the founder of Undivided Life, and his business partner, Nick Besner, they decided to come in not just as putting in a little bit of money themselves, but the next morning after I met with them, I just met with them for advice. Like, hey, can you advise me on this pitch? Maybe tell me who I should talk to. The next day, they said, hey, we're putting in 10K, and you should check your inbox. We just sent 70 emails out to other people that we know that are Catholic, that are really that could be
Oh,
the game
awesome.
changers for this.
Yeah.
I want you to make sure that you followed up with all of them in the next 24 hours. And I'm the sort of person that writes, like, I spend 45 minutes on an email. So it's like
Hmm.
20, I'm supposed to email 70 people.
Yeah.
Yeah, no way. It took me about a week to get through all of them. But within, that was, I think that happened in February. And then
Hmm.
from February through April, I spent the rest of those 2 months traveling to people's houses. I was asking not just, hey, like, if you want to get involved, here's what a share costs. I also was asking, would you be willing to open your home up to host a screening of the short film
Oh,
for some of
awesome.
your friends? And
Hmm.
so I would do these presentations to groups of 10 to 20 people. And yeah, within just a few months, we had the full 340K raised.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's like super grassroots, and that is a very interesting way to do it. Whereas is the way that I'm doing it is I'm raising money on the strength of any actors who become attached to the project who want to do it, and this
That's the
is this,
normal way of doing it.
right.
Yeah.
This is the side of the business that a lot of people really don't know about, and if I could, the way you went about it, that's like the optimal way. You find a couple of friends, and having the strength of a short film that's completed and that is good also helps a lot. But when you're going off the strength of a screenplay, you can't send 20 of your best friends a 120-page screenplay and
Right.
expect all of them to get it. And not even that, of the 1% who do get it, you can't rely on that person to give you $600,000 or whatever it is.
Right. Right.
So it's very tough. Okay, so you raise the money. This is shot overseas, right? Is it shot
Yeah.
in Poland?
Yeah.
That's cool. Okay, so environmentally accurate, geographically accurate. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
How long is production on the film?
So we spent 20 days, 20 shooting days, 20 shooting days. So basically a month all together with like company moves and rehearsal days and all that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now your lead, who plays Kolbe, looks really familiar.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a pretty well known, famous like Polish actor.
Okay.
I don't know if he's been in any big like Netflix films or anything like that the American audience has seen, but he's definitely a recognizable face for anybody that's watching European dramas and
Okay.
he's really busy. He's like working all the time, so his face is all over the place out there.
But you do have some people who are part of the cast who have been in, I think you mentioned in your Kickstarter campaign that we'll talk about a little bit later, there's people that come from, is it, Game of Thrones and The Chosen?
The Hunger Games and The Chosen.
The Hunger Games. Okay, yeah, sure. Okay.
So there's different between cast and crew. Cast, we have people who are involved in Hunger Games and also in Doctor Who and some other films like that. But for crew, we had our producer is worked on The Chosen, so she's in the AD department.
Gotcha.
For them. And we also had the stuntman that works with Tom Cruise and that did Hunger Games and stuff like that. So he was the coordinator for all of our stunts, and anything that had to look really gnarly, like that guy made, turned up the dial on the violence.
So, director-producer relationship. Are you picking crew, or are producers suggesting people to you? I mean, I'm assuming that you picked your DP, right? Like you had a DP lined up, someone that you've worked with before, and that's who your guy is. Did you work with a casting director at all?
Yeah. So pretty much everybody that was working in the departments, like heads of departments, except for hair and makeup and at costume, she was like, this was her third feature, but pretty much everybody else, it was their first feature, first time being in the role of like DP or whatever, the head of a department. We were working with a very green crew, and we were knowing that was going to be the case because of our budget, having to stretch it as far as we were just looking for these people who all had this like kind of incredible talent, had done a bunch of short stuff that we could see they really had something to offer, but who were looking to take a crack at something much bigger, and who would be willing to put in all of that extra suffering and work to make a movie that was 5 times more powerful than what it should have been compared to its budget. So yeah.
And what was it shot on?
We shot on a red Komodo and a red weapon.
Okay. Oh, cool. And how was a lot of the budget spent on location? Was it spent on having to shoot in Poland? Or, I mean, I'm not saying that like you couldn't shoot. I mean, you could shoot it in the States or whatever, but was a lot of the budget eaten up by travel, or did you find it to be actually the opposite?
Actually, yeah, we ended up raising an incredible amount of miles for people to fly out to Poland. I think 90% of our travel costs when it just came to like getting people to Poland were covered, and some people even flew themselves out there to do
awesome.
It's crazy. But no, I would say that the way that the budget grew, there was not one thing that was like, this was the expensive thing that really killed us. Like everything, when you're working at something of this level, it's like every single dime is like, I have $1 for you and I have $1 for you, like it's everything is penny pinching. And wheeling and dealing and like getting favors and all that. So
Right.
yeah, the one of the things that did really eat up our budget was we had to reschedule our Auschwitz days. So we had 2 days that we were doing all of our big Auschwitz exterior stuff with all the extras and the
Mm-hmm.
tanks and the like, you know, all the big set pieces, the vehicles and army cars and all that stuff, reenactors. So we had to shut down streets with the city and all that. But anyway, the 2 days that we were going to be shooting, we had a freak snowstorm come in super early, and there was just no way. Like the Polish people, they're like, dude, they are so crazy. They're like, we don't reschedule. Like we just give the extras hand warmers and stuff. We're like, we're not putting people in pajamas. Like,
right. Also, I mean, like, were you worried about continuity, or it's just like, well,
yeah,
it could have snowed, or okay.
It's like, no, like this is supposed to be August, and in the movie we ended up shooting it as if it was happening in like October. But still, like we couldn't deal with. And part of it is like some of these days are supposed to cut in with scenes from like way later on in the script, and you can't have like snow happening outside while like the guys are like hot and, you know, not able. They're like super thirsty inside. Like that doesn't work. So we had to reschedule them, and that cost us like an extra $50,000.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, okay. So let's talk about the Kickstarter, because the Kickstarter is raising money for post, right?
That's right.
So for people who don't understand, there's pre-production, there's actual production, and then there's post-production. So what is it being kind of like spread out pretty good between like sound mixing, coloring, whatever else, music, or is there a bulk of it that's going to something specific?
Yeah. So, I mean, we have 20 terabytes of footage. It's like 40 hours plus 10 tracks of audio for every scene for every hour. So you're like,
oh, and it's not edited yet, right? Like you put some pieces together for the Kickstarter and stuff like that. Okay, that was my other question. Obviously, editing is going to eat up a lot of that. Okay.
Yeah. So the first task that we just finished was actually just organizing all of the footage into scenes, linking it up with audio, and just like watching it and pulling the selects for the best best scenes and takes and things. So that takes an incredible amount of time, like way more time than you think. You're basically just kind of loading the RAM of the movie when you're doing that. And then from there, we're going to be spending, I would say, a third of it on the editing itself, a third of it on the sound design, a third of it on the composition, and then beyond that, we're going to be raising, if we raise more than the $80,000, we'll be spending the rest of that on VFX and on things like, hey, we have a composer that's really good at making like synthetic MIDI, like pre-programmed instruments sound good. But now that we have a little bit of extra, we're actually going to do a recording session with a string quartet and with a choir to actually get real music behind it. And so things like that will add a lot of production value with not that much money. So yeah.
Okay. What is it like? And I'm asking you this question as a dreamer, because right now I'm just dreaming. I'm separating myself from directing this film that I wrote, and everyone's like, "Why are you doing that?" And I'm saying I'm not in this position I could do it, but I'm not comfortable necessarily doing it. The person that I have it out to is an actor director, and it would be a dream. I'm offering it to him as the lead and to direct it. So if it happens, great. If not, then maybe I'll think about it. But as a dreamer, I'm thinking about these things, I already have a DP, that's fine. But the one thing that I think about daily is, oh man, who can I my dream person to score this film is this person. And it changes every week. Oh, isn't that great? Now that you actually have a film completed, and let's say that you'll have money to do this, like how cool is it to say, yeah, I can actually maybe approach someone or reach out to someone that I really admire to now ask if he or she would like to score my film? Like, how? I'm just talking about the feeling. What does that feel like? It's got to feel
Dude,
awesome.
I don't have that feeling at all. Like I
Really?
know,
No?
yeah, not even a little bit. I mean, like
Oh man.
I'm not gonna show up to somebody that's like a dream composer and be like, here's 15K to compose mine. Like,
No, or
no,
just
but
even, or just
yeah,
be even in the position to say, hey, I thought of you every day while shooting this, or at least now that it's completed, I see you doing this. But not even saying like offer the money, but like, you
yeah,
know, watch it and we'd love to
right,
have
right,
you work. Like that's what I'm saying, sort of being in the position to be able to now reach out to somebody.
yeah,
I'm offering someone air. You know what I mean? Like
right.
you have something tangible.
Yeah, that's true. It's one of the interesting things about running a Kickstarter is that all of a sudden, all these other people who are creative are getting to see it and then put their name in for being
Mm.
involved in post.
Hmm.
So we're getting hit up by composers really like every day. And that's been really cool. There've been some really talented people that have put their hats, put their hats in the, yeah,
Hmm.
in the ring. So I think that's cool. Part of the difficulty with the project is just everything that everything is uh trying to get somebody to do something for just like a fraction of what they normally get somewhere
Hmm.
else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And frankly, it's always hard to make that ask for me. I'm somebody that tends to be a little bit of a people pleaser, and I've
Hmm.
had to really mortify that during the process of making this. To ask people to give favors that are just like ridiculous. I know that a lot of the people that I'm going to be approaching for this, as composers, are getting like hundreds of thousands of dollars for scores that they're making, and I'm going to be asking them to do it for like I said, like 15
Right.
to 20K.
Right. Right.
So there's something like almost uncomfortable, and like I feel sort of guilty when I'm reaching out to people that I'm still trying to work through
Yeah.
as a director myself. Although I will say that it is really cool to be able to lean on the work and know, wow, people get really excited about what we're doing
Right.
from what they see. And they're like, wow, I've been waiting for a project like this to come across for so long. And I think part
Hmm.
of that is just like so many people get such meaningless stuff that they have to work on. And a lot of the money that they're getting paid is to work on really heartless,
Right.
absolutely like trash stuff. So when
Garbage.
they see
Garbage.
something that, yes, when they see something like this, they're like, I really would love to, without making this the thing that makes me money, like really lean on my artistic side and see what I can make to
Right.
honor this saint. So
Yeah, and I'm not saying like it's, you're asking people for charity or anything like
right,
that, or out there with a bowl in your hands. But it's almost like one of these things where, let's just use Hans Zimmer as an example. Like,
yeah,
Hans Zimmer is getting paid millions of dollars to do scores, Thomas Newman, those types of people. But
right,
then imagine if you send out something to Hans Zimmer, and let's just say you find out Hans Zimmer out of nowhere is just this Catholic that really never talks about his faith, and he sees, oh, Kolbe is his favorite saint. Not only is he his favorite saint, but he actually likes the movie now that he's seen it. Of course, I'll score it for 15 grand. You know what I mean? Just to be attached to it.
hmm
That's the dream. And it's just exciting to think about things like that. Now, also, as a realist, you know, you won't even get an answer from Hans Zimmer's agent, when you really
right.
think about it. But I'm not saying that you won't. I'm just saying that I know if I reached out, whatever. But
In the beginning, I actually was practicing this. Like I reached out to Shia LaBeouf and to
mhm,
um, a lot of the different Catholic, the people who are like on the radar. It's like, hey, I'm
yeah,
Catholic and I'm doing films in Hollywood. But the thing is, all of them have this layer between them and
yes,
the little guy, which is their agent, and their
right,
agents don't give it flying rats
yes.
butt about
Hmm. You got to be
Colby or
nice to
anything like that.
you got to be nice to the agent's assistants. I found out that developing good and friendly relation. A friend of mine was like, "Who do you want to send it out to?" So I said, "Okay, send his agent's assistant flowers. Just send him flowers. Then a
Nice.
week later, call back and say, hey, I'm like, did you get the flowers?" And they'll be like, yeah. And I said, okay, this is a friend who's been in the business for a while, and it's kind of like an old school trick. But like you
Yeah,
said, these people have that little buffer between them. Did you talk to Mel about it at all? Did you try and reach out to Mel?
I did.
Yeah.
I also got like shot down from his agent too. I didn't try the flower thing, but
Right.
their agent did not seem like the sort of person that would fall for the flower trick.
Yeah,
to
no,
be honest.
probably not. But you get into the good graces of the assistant, which is good. And I mean, like, I've done that to try and get guests on the show where
Mhm.
I've never been someone who's scared of reaching out to people. So I would just say,
Mhm.
hey, my name's Mike. I do this podcast. It's somewhat of, a moderate size audience. Like, we'd love to have Shia on or Mel on. And the response that I got from Mel Gibson was like, hey, thank you for reaching out. He just absolutely has no time as he's starting, I think, work on production of The Passion 2 or whatever it was.
Mhm.
The response that I got from Shia was something like, hey, again, his shooting schedule, because I think he's doing some, who's the Godfather director, Francis Ford Coppola film or something like that, I remember. But they actually got back to me, and I was pretty surprised that they actually gave me a little bit more information rather than like not available or just no answer at all.
Yeah,
So I like that. Okay.
that's cool.
Would you classify Triumph of the Heart as a, quote, faith-based movie?
Yeah, that's interesting. I really recoil from things like that. I would.
Mhm.
It's funny. I would use that in marketing copy for raising money right now.
Sure. Yeah.
But when it comes to distribution, I really want to avoid that because
hmm
I think that the truth is, yes, it is, but only insofar as it's part of the actual story.
Right.
It's not shoehorned in the way that I think we often have come to expect from the brand of faith-based movies. At least it's, we're trying to be really subtle with how it's used. I think because, like, in a lot of ways, Kolbe himself has to be subtle with it with the guys that he's speaking to. I think
Mhm.
that one of the pieces of feedback that I've gotten from a couple of the different, big players up at the top of the Catholic media world has been, this guy doesn't seem like he's really that, like, like this masterful mind of catechesis and theology that we've expected. And it's like, okay, well, that makes sense because his audience in this cell is guys who give zero shits about
Right.
that. Like,
That's what I was just about to say. Yeah.
as soon as he steps in the cell and he starts to like make some like efforts through argumentation, like these guys just like completely shut him off. Like all
Mhm.
of them agree the best way out right now is to kill ourselves. If that's the case, you don't start like trying to make an argument from like Thomas Aquinas on like God's existence. Like that's not
Mhm.
how you get to these people. So
Right.
I think part of the reason why this, I would say, is not necessarily a faith-based film is because there's a lot of characters in it that are not like that are not obvious like options for that, and that kind of force and ground the movie in much more of a secular audience in a way. So
Right.
yeah.
Well, it's kind of like you made an apt comparison before. It's if 12 Angry Men made a faith-based drama, or like if 12 Angry Men was like a faith-based drama. It's not as much as of a theological expression as much as it is like philosophical expression, because like you said, he just can't start he just can't start doing apologetics to these people because he's not even necessarily I mean, we don't know this, but he wasn't trying to convert these people, right? I guess he was just trying to keep their spirits up, and hey, killing yourself probably isn't the answer here, but he's not going to go into full on Aquinian apologetics. So I do get
Right.
that, and I've told people like, well, people have asked me like, is this a faith-based movie? And people on the blacklist who have evaluated it, every single one of the prospects are like, this would be great for a faith-based studio to produce. And I'm just like, no. And I always pitch it to people like, it's as if A24 would make a faith-based movie. And
I love that, man. Yeah.
right? So it's like, oh, I kind of know what he's saying here.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be this whole underlying theological sort of environment surrounding the movie, even though there are aspects of that. So it's very interesting that, these people have these sort of comments like, well, Kolbe wasn't, he wasn't engaged in apologetics throughout this whole movie. Isn't that what it's supposed to be? It's like, no, it's about a guy who has given up his life in order to save another, and then being in a room with the most diverse group of people from these, like, I guess, groups that don't have anything to do with each other, and they're just trying to survive. So
Yeah.
it's not not necessarily, I don't know what's the best way to put this. It's not like a movie that's preaching Christianity, if that makes any sense, right?
Yeah, right. Definitely not. I would say that it certainly has
It's a Catholic
clear
movie,
moral,
right?
Like we're trying to say that for some reason, despite the sort of math that like you look at like this equation with the eyes of the world, it we're still saying that even in this situation, it's better that they don't kill themselves. You know, it's better that they fight for their lives all the way through the very end.
Right.
And I think that we're making a statement about the foundations of reality, like how reality works. But it's not really a theological one as much as it is this like very human one. And the stakes are very human, but faith is a part of that. So, yeah.
I don't know if whoever watched this movie high up in the Catholic Church was like, well, surprisingly, he didn't quote the catechism to these people, so not for me.
Yeah, exactly. But so you're making this clearly like something that you want to do that's more art house if it's like A24.
Yes.
So I would like to hear your thoughts on this because this is the comment that I've gotten a lot, which is Catholics don't like art house cinema and you're making a feathered fish. I've heard that many times. What would you say to that?
I would say, have you ever heard of Terrence Malick or Tarkovsky? Like that's what I would that's what I would say. I mean,
yeah, but those guys never made money.
Well, Malick made, true. And I mean, if they're looking at it from that point of view, then sure. Yeah. But if they're looking at it from culture, if they're looking at it from art in general, then no, it doesn't matter, because this was going to be one of my questions. Can you name some of your favorite secular films that do have a spiritual foundation to them? And that's where I would bring up Tarkovsky, where Tarkovsky, there are films of his where, religion is at the center of it. But then you have someone like Terrence Malick, who you can tell, like, this dude is 100% a Christian philosopher. Like, we know this 100%. He has dialogue from the St. Patrick's breastplate prayer into the wonder. Like, what is he thinking about? So as far as someone says, like, what's the quote that the Christian films or Catholics don't like films that are feathered?
There's two different things. One is they don't like art house films, but then to illustrate that, they're saying this is a feathered fish. You're making a movie for like a sort of audience that's into faith, but you're making it this indie, more darker style, right?
Yeah.
That to them doesn't compute. It's like,
sure,
audience is like, we want high key lighting, very happy endings. Like, this is what we're talking about with that. So
I get that. Well, I mean, not everybody. Okay, so there's like two sides to that coin, right? Like, you can make a movie like The Passion of the Christ, right? Yeah. Huge studio movie. You have Mel Gibson, and this thing makes, hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars. And then you go to the other side where you have these certain studios, I'm not going to name them, who make these movies where you do have the key lighting. You have, the people who were at one point maybe, A-list or B-list actors who are now in this realm of faith.
And
Sure. And it's the same story every single time. So at least with an art house movie, if the point of the film isn't thrown directly at your face, then that's okay. Like, it causes people to think a little bit more. Oh, it's okay. It's a guy who's he's an alcoholic. Like Father Stu, I thought was going to be kind of cool. And then when I saw it, I was like, oh.
Really?
Yeah, I
liked it. I'm not like just looking for really, I definitely don't like the super faith-based stuff. I actually thought it was really good.
It was good, but in a weird way, I was like, why is this rated R? This is rated, like, why? There's part of that movie that I didn't like, but also it was that formula that you are talking about that I'm like, guys, if it's not, and let's talk about, like, let's get the money out of it. Like, do you
do you want to hit people in their spiritual hearts, or do you want to hit them in the wallet? Because it's awesome to hit them in both places, right? But I think a film is more profound if, the person who sees it is thinking about it a month later, 2 months later. How many times is he going to go to the movies? How many times is he going to stream it? I mean, that's something that I think about a lot. And, with the movie that I'm making, it's going to be an indie for sure. And I've had to tone down a lot of the Catholicism in it, because at first it was completely secular. Then it turned into really Catholic. And then I'm like, I want to reach as many people as possible, but the Catholics who do watch this, they're going to say, well, this is kind of like nothing I really seen. This is cool. So I don't know. It's tough. I get that. I get what you're saying, though. But
it's tough because in a lot of ways, I feel like artists like yourself and I'd say myself definitely want to stretch our audiences. Like we as human beings are probably like outliers when it comes to our tastes and the sort of things that we like, and our willingness to sort of embrace things that are far afield from what's like mainstream, even in our own kind of group. And I don't know if that's the case for you, but I would definitely say when I'm thinking about like, okay, my mom, will my mom watch this? Will she like this? It's like,
right.
This is going to be really tough for her to get through. And I don't know how much like Passion of the Christ we watch every Lent, and I think it's still like one of the more difficult things that like my mom has ever gotten into and gotten behind. So obviously it can be done. But I think there's a risk to the people economically who are investing in the film.
Right.
And if we don't solve that problem as filmmakers, we're not going to get shots at doing doing this stuff sustainably, making our jobs about it. So that's what I've been thinking about with this.
I think about that too all the time. I think about, well, let's say that it's not necessarily a commercial hit, but it does well on the film festival circuit or something like that, or it does well with awards or whatever it is. It's like, hey, we didn't have the financial success that that we necessarily wanted, or that I even thought that we would have. Guess what? It's a tax write-off anyway, so that's a benefit. But yeah, I've always wondered about that. Like I would campaign on, my film or your film. Like let's get these Catholic, not Christian. Let's get these Catholic films into the mainstream film festival circuits. Let's see what we can do there. Because if there's any film that breaks that, I think you only start to get more people involved in wanting to at least make, I don't want to say like Catholic-centered movies, but it's the one thing that, as far as culturally, not Christians, but like conservative groups, they don't do well. They don't do art very well. And it's been lacking, because if you go to like the beginning of Hollywood, and even people like Malick and Tarkovsky during the 70s, there are points where just conservatives don't get it right. They really don't. They miss the ball. And I want to, I don't know, I guess have my film.
Are you saying that about Malick and
yours,
Tarkovsky?
Yeah.
Like you're saying like they didn't get it right because they were conservative?
No, they did. They did apart from them. You know what I mean? So it's just like, it's like you're saying, like conservatives, they can't wrap their heads around art house pictures. You don't know how many people I've tried to get into Malick who are conservatives, like, you have to watch this. And they're like, nothing happened. I sat there for 2.5 hours and nothing. I mean, look, okay.
It's like a ballet, dude. Yeah. You're like,
right.
Trying to take somebody to ballet.
I'm sure you watched, was it A Quiet Life?
Hidden Life, yeah.
Right, Hidden Life. How did I even get that wrong? It's like one of my favorite guys ever. But that film is so beautiful. I thought about that film, for the years after it's been out, right? And the one great thing about Malick is like, there's no dialogue. It's all exposition. It's all inner monologues of somebody. And it's an incredibly beautiful and important movie. And it just pains me that people are like, well, nothing really happened for 2.5 hours. And I'm just like, well, it's like, what do we do?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that's really interesting to me, is like, you think about like what's mainstream now and what's mainstream back in like the 20th century and 19th centuries, and you're like, yeah, you have people like Tolstoy or Dostoevsky who become like invited to the king's court because Brothers K is like one of the best things ever made, right? Like if that guy is a household name in Europe, like that meant that mainstream people were reading the Brothers Karamazov, right? Like they had the patience to sit through like however many 600 pages of long Russian dialogue where like nothing is happening according to like the current cinematic standards. I think that just in general our culture, and unfortunately even like conservative culture, when it comes to our appreciation of art and beauty, we've gotten so lazy, lazy.
Yeah.
And our attention spans have been so like massaged and slowly and subtly condensed by our encounter with modern media. And I think that is, unfortunately, you even see this with like, conservative culture to me seems to be even more unwilling to embrace more poetic, artistic, like higher art stuff than liberal culture is, which is, I don't see how that's even possible considering like our history and the art that that is the foundation of our worldview, So
yeah, it's tough because I don't want to lay everything on the conservatives, because when you have a liberal country and a liberal entertainment industry where really the only time you see the portrayal of Catholics in film is if it's if it's a complete heresy like the Da Vinci Code, if it's exorcism or horror movies that are purely demonic and exaggerated, or if it's surrounding any sort of controversy within the church, whether it be priests
child
or
abuse
nuns or something. Like it's just like that's the only thing that we get. And then they make a lot of money. Those movies are nominated for Academy Awards like Spotlight and Doubt and all those kind of things. And things like, and I mean, I'm talking about like modern horror movies, because The Exorcist is probably one of the best Catholic movies like ever to come out, written by a very obedient Catholic in William Blatty. But even the new iteration of The Exorcist, Believer, I don't know if you've seen it, but it was like, it's like, hey, these kids are possessed. Let's talk to the Catholic priest. The Catholic priest says, okay, what I have to go do is I have to go to the diocese. They have to determine if this is a psychological problem or if this really is a spiritual problem. People are like, oh, really? That's not how. Yeah. They come back. Listen, we've determined that this isn't a true possession, that it's more of a psychological issue. I can't be involved in any sort of exorcism at all. And then the people are like, well, guess what? It's going to take all of the world's religion to do this. And it's just like, oh, you guys, it's stupid. I hate it. But like I'm saying, like anything to sort of disparage the Roman Catholic or the Catholic Church, obviously they're going to do that. And then you get a movie like A Hidden Life, or you get a movie like Triumph of the Heart, and then it's just nothing. It's just in the ether. People, it's not pushed as much as like the Pope's Exorcist or anything like that. There is no art house for Christian films. I'm trying to think of, have there any that I've seen lately that are like expressly like Christian? No. And it's like, so what do we do? I think we have to create it.
Yeah. I think we have to create it, and somehow we have to find what Mel Gibson did, which was to make something that feels artistic but also feels commercial, if that makes sense. And somehow like that movie, you think about like, okay, how does somebody do the crucifixion and do Jesus's story? And Mel Gibson had the courage at that time, which was much before any of this other stuff happened, to put like demon babies, and like satanic snaky guys and stuff. Like it's like really gritty and really dark. And he did some like psychological stuff that was very subtle, very horrifying, but like
and in Aramaic.
Yeah. And I think just there was something about him for me that I've sort of elevated as this is the guy I'm shooting for. Even though I love Malick and I love the work that he does, I just know that I don't get to make that kind of film until I've like made enough money to be able to rest on my laurels and do some
Sure.
self-indulgent stuff, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah.
I get that. Mine is completely self-indulgent, if I'm honest. That's what it is. So yeah, I'll start off with the Malik, and if the success of the Malik works out, then I'll maybe go Mel Gibson.
That's amazing.
Well, yeah, I mean the main character has my name, and it's just like, I mean, that's a placeholder.
Does he have a massive mustache too?
He could. He
I hope
definitely could. I'm thinking, well, the actor could pull it off for sure. So I might impart that on him. But listen, thank you for coming onto the show. I really do appreciate it. I'm going to put links, especially in the YouTube upload. I will put a link that you can click on to the Kickstarter. Is that how long until that ends? Is it something that I said like 22 days or something?
Yeah, we have just about a month left.
And your goal has been reached, but you're just setting kind of like more goals just as far as like wanting to raise more money. Like you initially had a goal of $20,000 and you blew past that, right? So you guys are getting money.
Yeah. It's one of the most successful crowdfunding campaigns I've ever seen, and I've participated in a lot of them. So it's definitely striking a nerve. The truth is we set out to hopefully raise $80K. It's clear that we're going to do that. We're probably going to do that in the next couple of days. But we needed much more than that ultimately. And any dollar that comes in, not only is it going to help us to make the movie much more powerful, but it's going to help us to prove to distribution that it's a movie worth picking up. I mean, in the past, it would be like it did well in film festivals, but like now that doesn't matter at all.
There's no evidence for money.
Right.
Okay,
so like these crowdfunding campaigns, they are sort of like proof to distributors that there's a market there that is willing to put money behind the film. And if the more money that's put behind it, the better of a deal that it's going to, they're going to make us when it comes to, hey, do we get a theatrical release or do we just get straight to the, head straight to the streaming platforms or, how much money are we going to put behind this in terms of marketing, et cetera. So, yeah.
Well, listen, Anthony, I'm going to put all those links down there. Thank you so much for talking to me. And I can't wait to see it when it comes out. And I respect your decision for doing the short in black and white. And if you guys haven't seen it, you can definitely Google the short because people can watch it on Vimeo. So it's there, right? So
yeah. People can find it and search, Maximilian Kolbe short film or something like that, and you'll find it.
Okay, thanks, Anthony. We really do appreciate it, and I'm gonna stick around because I want to ask you a question after off air.
Okay, sounds good.
But yeah, thank you very much, and God bless.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.